It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Ralph Sarchie, and we're going to be discussing his book, Deliver Us from Evil, a New York City cop investigates the supernatural. Ralph, it is truly an honor, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Shaun. Appreciate it.
Well, anybody who's read your book or potentially watched the movie based on your book has a bit of context for you, but I know to many of my viewers and listeners, you are going to be brand new. So I'd love to kick things off by having you share a little bit of your backstory in terms of growing up, like religious persuasion of your family. Like, what were you exposed to at a young age? Give us some context for your early years.
Well, I grew up Catholic. I'm still a Catholic. I'm a traditional Catholic. I attend the Tridentine Mass, the Latin Mass. I was an altar boy when I was younger. I went to Catholic school from grade 1 to grade 8. I was a pretty avid reader back in those days. I still am. If I like the book, I'll read it. If not, I I can't read it. So I read a lot over the years about the supernatural and about Ed and Lorraine Warren. And when I got older, I reached out to the Warrens and became one of their investigators. And you know, um, the rest is history, as they say.
And one of the things I think that's interesting from your backstory is you kind of had two roads. You're either going to play baseball or go into law enforcement. Tell us a little bit about that part of your journey.
Well, I loved baseball when I was a kid. Played it from sun up to sunset. I grew up in New York, so we didn't have like 12 months that we could go outside and play baseball for the most part. But in the summer months, as soon as that sun came up until well after it went down, I was outside playing baseball. It was my love. I shared that passion with my father. I played right up into college. I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice. My grades weren't good, but I did pretty well in baseball. But like I wrote about, the major leagues felt that they could do without me because I wasn't good enough. So, one of the reasons why I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice is, because I was looking towards a career in law enforcement. And that's what I wound up doing for 20 years of my life, uh, patrolling the streets of New York City.
And in terms of getting started in your work as a demonologist, like when did that world kind of connect into your world? I'm curious, where was that kind of intersection point where that suddenly came on the scene for you?
Well, basically, when my oldest daughter was born, I had gone out clothes shopping to, you know, she was growing at a rapid pace. So we had to go out and get clothes and happened to pass by a bookstore. And I went into the bookstore and it was actually my ex-wife who came up to me and handed me a book called Satan's Harvest, which had to do with a man named Maurice Theriault and the Warrens. So I brought it home and I read it, and I read it in one sitting. Actually, I was on vacation, so I devoured that whole entire book. And I decided I was going to reach out to Ed and Lorraine. So I got a listing for their number, and I spoke to Lorraine for about 45 minutes one night. Ed was in Newfoundland at the time. So I had this long conversation with Lorraine, and to make a long story short, I entered the work about, I think it was about 2 months later. I didn't enter the work until I got my daughter, Christina, baptized. Once she was baptized, I entered the work, full steam ahead. It pretty much consumed a lot of my free time.
And in terms of getting started with the work, like what did that look like initially? Was it going out and doing investigations? Was it participating in exorcisms? Like, how does one get their feet wet, so to speak, in a space like that?
Well, I had to travel up to Connecticut where the Warrens live. That was I believe, a little over a 3-hour round trip, and I wound up going up there at least twice a month. aside from going out and investigating cases. And it was at this point that I started to assist Bishop McKenna, in solemn exorcisms, because I don't consider myself an exorcist. I never have. I want to make that pretty clear. I'm a demonologist. Only an ordained clergyman should undertake the responsibility of solemn exorcisms. So, that's where I got my start. And eventually, I started a New York City chapter of the New England Society for Psychic Research and had my own investigators. And I worked with my partner at the time, Joe Forrester. And, we handle our own cases, and we handle the cases that came up on our side of the globe as far as the Warrens were concerned. If we got a case in New York, they sent us, or a case in Virginia, we would go to the case and handle it. So that's pretty much where I got my start, is through Ed and Lorraine Warren. And eventually I went out on my own.
And in terms of this idea of being a demonologist, or I think I've heard you describe yourself as a religious demonologist, how does that differ from, say, the work of ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, both of which are extremely popular in media and culture right now? What's the differentiation there? I think that's important.
Okay, well, the way I look at it is paranormal investigators, which back in the day when I first started, they referred to themselves as parapsychologists, and they actually approached the preternatural and the supernatural in a scientific manner. Where I differ from them is I didn't approach it from a scientific point of view. I approached it from a religious point of view, because when you really uncover it and look at it, it's a spiritual matter. It really doesn't fall into the scientific realm, although in this day and age, we've had some pretty smart people out there develop scientific tools that would give us the ability to measure, in the spirit world. So for the Demon Files, I don't know if you saw my show, The Demon Files. It was only three cases. I started to enlist the use of scientific methods, with the foundation always being of a religious nature. My investigations are always done within the context of either I'm going to do an exorcism or I'm not going to do an exorcism. And in the Catholic Church, solemn exorcisms are exorcisms that are performed over people for demonic possession. Local exorcisms are in homes. So that's the difference between them. And there is a very big difference between a local exorcism and a solemn exorcism.
And I'd love to spend a little bit of more time hearing about your mentors, your influences in terms of whether it's Ed and Lorraine Warren, Malachi Martin, Bishop McKenna. Like, how did each of these folks influence you, or what was maybe the specific area they influence your work? And I'm just curious what each of those relationships gave you in terms of growth and experience.
Well, not taking anything away from the Warrens, my biggest influences as far as my mentors are concerned are Father Malachi Martin and Bishop McKenna. Because, like I said, this is a spiritual matter. And it was due to those two men that my faith actually grew and became a lot stronger, because there became a point where I stopped seeking an education about the devil and his demons by going to books written about the devil and demons. I, in turn, went to seek out God, because in order to know who the devil really is, or who the devil really isn't, you need to know who God is. That's the foundation that you need to build any type of ministry, especially in this field, whether it be through deliverance or, an exorcist in the Catholic Church. There needs to be that strong foundation with God, or you should not be even approaching this type of situation. So it was due to these two men really that I sought a deeper and closer relationship with God. And now, in hindsight, I knew that that's where I should have actually started. I'm not saying that you don't go out and read books about the subject. That it's always good to hear other people's experiences as long as they're telling the truth about them. It gives you a more of a more total picture. So you put them both together, but you should start with God.
And I'm curious to hear, in terms of skills, things you learned on the job as a police officer, what skills, methodologies were transferable to your work as a demonologist?
Well, I think that the police department had prepared me in the area of actually investigations. You know, um, what tools do you need, or what formula do you need to go by in order to do a well-rounded investigation? So, in that respect, that's helped me. The experience of dealing with, very violent people, very negative situations, to be in control of yourself in these types of situations would always lend itself, you know, uh, especially in the realm of solemn exorcism. Some of them get very, very violent. So, I was used to dealing with violent people. Not that I would treat a person who's possessed the same way I would treat a violent felon. My goal was never to hurt somebody who's possessed, but in the same vein, you have to deal with that violence that comes along with it, and that was a good way to experience the violence, the constant violence every night. That sort of put me in the right frame of mind to deal with people who are violent during the rite of exorcism.
And in terms of documenting investigations, exorcisms, why is it important to film or record certain things? Obviously, that's not necessarily for sharing with the public in any way, but why is it important to document, both to, I guess, for teaching purposes, and also really to keep track of what happens? Because I would imagine you miss some things in the moment.
Well, my main concern, the importance would be, the first thing is to CYA, cover our butts. It's not unheard of for people to have died during solemn exorcisms, and the law isn't set up to recognize that kind of stuff. So they're going to be looking to get you. They're going to be looking to find a way to put you in prison. We know that from the Annalise Michelle case, where the priest and the mother and father of Annalise Michelle, who unfortunately died under the care of the priest, were actually given us this. They were found guilty of, I believe it was negligent homicide. It was in Germany, and they were given suspended sentences because it wasn't done in the context of, you know, the with the intention of killing this person. But unfortunately, the courts do not look upon the rites of exorcism and don't understand it for the most part. So that would be the first and foremost. If that ever unfortunately happened, we'd have a documented record of what took place here. So the jury would be able to see what actually transpired. And the other reason is, as you mentioned, was for training purposes. And you're absolutely right. I have never released in public any of the exorcisms that I've taped and have on file. They never will, because back in those days, people didn't want their name to be in public. They wanted confidentiality. Hey, listen, I don't want to show up on the news. These days, people are chomping at the bit to get on TV, it seems. you know um so things have changed over the years, but when I first started, people wanted that hush hush. No, don't say nothing about that. So I've always I have always honored that, even to the point in my book, all the names were changed and locations were changed. Some of the details of the family were changed, but not the specifics of the case. They remained, consistent with the reality of what we were dealing with on that case.
And in terms of preparation, whether this is before an investigation or to participate in an exorcism, I know in the book you talk about doing like a black fast and going to confession. Now, having talked to other exorcists and people who do ministry in this space, many of them said when I asked this sort of question, well, actually, it's actually my lifestyle to live like that. So, like for you, like what were the ways you prepared, whether investigation, participating in an exorcism? What did that look like for you?
Well, when we were dealing with solemn exorcisms, I would do the black fast, like the priest would do. And that's 3 days of one meal and lots of prayer. Try going through a day, just eat one meal. It's quite difficult, but try doing 3 days, where you're just permitted to eat one meal for the day. It's quite involved, but it's also, there needs to be a physical penance that we do, because we're physical and we're spirit. So in order to put the physical prayers that we say, into exorcism, you should put something physical in there, where you're connecting these two elements of your being, the physical and the spiritual, and making them, go as one. So when you do assist at a solemn exorcism, you've shown God that you want to help this person as much as possible. So you're following his commandments. When it comes to houses, like I said, we would fast the day of. There wasn't, we wouldn't do the black fast for a local exorcism because they're not as, how can I put it? They're so different, and the way I put it is a solemn exorcism is very, very important as far as I'm concerned, for lack of a better term. But I look at exorcisms of homes more like amusement park rides compared to a solemn exorcism. The rules are different and the demons behave differently. We're talking about the physical body of a person instead of the material, things that a person owns, even though they're both dangerous. One is a lot less than the other. So it would just be a fast for that particular day until the exorcism was over, where then you can go and satisfy your appetite, your hunger.
And next, I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of the, if you will, the tools of the demonologist. A lot of my audience would be more of the charismatic deliverance persuasion. So they think about if they're going to go pray for somebody, they're just going to go and pray for somebody, ask the Holy Spirit to partner with them. If any of you have done any length of reading in terms of Catholic exorcism, in terms of tools, blessed objects, crucifix, it just looks a little bit different. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about what was in your toolkit, your bag, so to speak, when you would go to a house or anything like that?
Well, I would say that the first and foremost tool that I had, or still have, is in fact a relic of the true cross, a sliver of the cross that Jesus Christ was crucified on. And I obtained that from El Mirage, Arizona. There was a priest named Father LeBlanc. He was 90 back then, so I know that he's passed on now. And he was in charge. He was actually a traditional Catholic priest, and he was in charge of the relics here in the United States, because the relics, they come from Rome, they come from the Vatican. And now there is a priest that actually goes around from parish to parish with relics from the Vatican. But I don't believe any of them are for sale. And you're not supposed to sell relics anyway. It's a mortal sin in the Catholic Church. But I obtained the relic from Father LeBlanc, and would use that in my exorcisms of the homes. I also utilized holy oil, blessed salt, blessed incense, and blessed oil. And these are all sacramentals within the Catholic Church that, if they're blessed properly, by a very holy priest, they have a very special effect on the demonic. So we've utilized that many times throughout cases. The way I developed my in my exorcisms of homes, because there is nothing listed in the Roman ritual, that tells a priest or anyone how to actually go about exercising a home. It was usually priests would come in, do a blessing of the house, but sometimes it wasn't strong enough or powerful enough to, cast out the demon that was, inhabiting the house or affecting the family. Uh, so we developed this rite of exorcism within a home, strongly relying on incense, because incense was a gift that was given to Jesus Christ when he was born. The Magi brought gifts of frankincense and myrrh, and also we have to understand that Saint Michael stands at the right hand of the altar of incense. So when we utilize the sacrament of incense, we're calling upon God, not only God, but the Archangel Michael to assist us in the battle that we're undertaking. And we use this in conjunction with the Pope Leo the 13th prayer, which is a minor form of exorcism. That could be utilized by exorcists in solemn exorcisms when they're dealing with oppressions or obsession cases, or just for a lot of times I would go up to Connecticut and I would have Bishop McKenna read the Pope Leo 13th prayer over me, just to strengthen my spiritual aura, just to strengthen my spirituality, to keep me protected from the things that I was dealing with pretty much on a constant basis. And so the sacramentals are very important, and we utilized them, and we had some great success with them.
In terms of just having talked to a number of different folks who minister in the space of exorcism and deliverance, I know people have different levels of sensitivity to evil, and so I know you described in your book that sometimes you would get a pain of in your temple, so to speak, when you would be kind of in the presence of evil. Love for you to just talk about what that sensitivity or response was like for you, and also maybe a bit of a caution for folks who have more of a seer gifting, or to use a non Christian term, more of a psychic ability, or however, whatever words you want to hang on it. So your experience, and just maybe a caution for people who are more predisposed to that sort of phenomenon to participate in something like this.
Yeah, a lot of times during exorcisms, whether they're solemn or local exorcisms, I would get a pain in my either right temple or left temple, something that I'm not used to getting. It's not a headache. It's it's an annoyance more than anything else. I mean, it doesn't incapacitate me. All I would do is notice it and forge ahead. It wasn't a consistent thing where it happened every single time. So I didn't rely on it as an indicator on what I was dealing with. I would just notice it and move on. You know, I don't consider myself a psychic. I don't have ability outside of actively handling cases. I don't have that discernment, which is one of the seven gifts of the Holy Ghost. It's only when I am actively dealing with a case itself that I would, you know, sort of instinctively know what I need to do and what direction I need to go in. Although I would always back it up with maybe something physical, something I might see in the environment. Because when I handle a case, I go through the whole entire house. I look at everything, because a lot of times we're dealing with contact objects, which could actually bring the case to fruition, without even the family realizing that they have this contact object. which is utilized. And that is the opposite of, basically the sacramentals that we use. If a priest can, transfer a blessing to an object, then, you can have the occultist that could transfer uh, something negative to an object. If we're affected by these blessed objects in the positive, people could be affected by negatively charged objects, in the physical. So, you know, I would go through everything and rely on my instincts to, guide me during the case. And if I see something I don't like, I bring it to the individual or the family and I ask about it. I want an explanation for it, and I've run my investigations sort of like a paramilitary operation. I don't have investigators running all over the house doing whatever they want. They have a specific set role to play, and I don't want them stepping outside of that role unless I know they're doing it. So, that's just the way it is. And for investigators that have these psychic abilities, know that you're going to be attacked through those senses, because that's how the devil attacks us, through our five senses. That's how we sin, through our five senses. If you know that when Jesus Christ was crucified and he died on that cross, his five senses were attacked, because these are the gifts that we're given to sin. We can turn these gifts into something that we'll use to sin. So you're going to be attacked through those five senses. And if any of those senses are heightened, the demonic are definitely going to hone in on that, and they're going to try to use them against you.
And in terms of times of year, are there any specific times in the calendar year that are more active for diabolical or demonic activity?
Yeah, they usually correspond with holy days in the church. I've noticed that around Easter, around Christmas, very important holy days. Another time of year would be Halloween. Seems to be, every freak and nut is out there howling at the moon around Halloween. So, it heightens the energy that the demonic spirit love to go after. The fear is an emotion that they absolutely love, because we vibrate at a higher frequency, and they love that kind of stuff. So that's why they try to elicit fear from their victims, from people, is because they actually thrive on negativity, and fear is mostly a negative emotion.
And in terms of, I guess we'll follow that up with a question about times of day. We often hear about the witching hour, just having a bunch of friends in my publishing space who are prophetic or have seer giftings. They talk about so much more activities, spiritually speaking, happens at night. So are there certain times of night when we see more activity happening?
Well, the witching hours, for lack of or psychic hours, which they were known by, Ed and Lorraine Warren, are from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., with 3 a.m. being the point of it heightening. The reasoning for this is that Jesus Christ died on the cross at 3 p.m., and the demonic will always do things the opposite of anything that's holy. And the opposite of 3 p.m. is 3 a.m. It's also a time when people are usually sleeping, and they are approaching maybe REM sleep around that point. So, people are giving off a lot of psychic energy around that time. And I also think that we as a society are conditioned to fear the night, to fear, to fear when it becomes dark out. And, I'll give you an example. You have a basement in your house. When you go down into the basement during the daytime, you're fine. There's no apprehension. You go down and you do what you got to do. It's still light out. But you go down there at night, and now there might be nothing crazy for most people. but there's a might be a little more apprehension going down into the basement when it's nighttime out. And I think we're sort of conditioned uh, like that, from childhood, where all the ghost stories, they take it place at night and it's dark and it's raining and the storm is raging. So we have this preconditioning towards being fearful of the things in the nighttime. And usually the demonic, when they first start to attack during the infestation stage, they predominantly attack at night, not during the day. It's only when we get to the stage of oppression, obsession, that they'll start to actually attack during the daylight hours.
Talk a little bit more to things happening in threes, like, and again, it's kind of that reversing opposite of Jesus died at 3 p.m., 3 a.m. But in terms of activity, three knocks, three this, three that, seems like that comes up a lot where there are phenomenon happening in threes, and that's usually a good indicator that it may be something diabolical.
Yeah, basically, it's an insult to the Holy Trinity of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And three plays a very significant role in the Catholic Church, along with the number seven and along with the number 21. Uh, there seems to be some type of connection with these particular numbers. And three is a very, very important number, and it is an insult to the Holy Trinity. So that's why the demonic will actually announce themselves, and causing phenomenon to happen in threes. And it's a good indication for a demonologist.
And in terms of, let's say a location that is, having some kind of demonic phenomenon going on, what are some of the typical signs? Knocking, scratching, rooms getting suddenly cold. Like, what are some of the telltale signs that there might be a problem?
Well, in the infestation stage you're speaking about, you would get maybe three knocks at the front door. The people go to answer it, nobody will be there. The phone might ring three times, or it might even ring with a prolonged ring. You might hear, heavy breathing on the phone, growling. You might hear static. You might even hear the voice of a deceased loved one. That seems to be a favorite of the demonic. They love to do that. It elicits such a negative emotion to hear somebody's voice that passed away. You know, um, you might hear scratching underneath your bed or in the walls. Things to drive you crazy. Your water might go on by itself. A door might open on its own. Might shut on its own. You might hear maybe footsteps. You might hear somebody call your name in the house when you're alone. A family member calling your name. I've had that a lot. You might hear the sound of an animal crying in torment. Now, we're talking about something that's going to elicit an emotion of a negative emotion. A baby crying in torment is another one that they love to perpetrate on people. You might get knockings in the walls. There's a whole array of things that can happen. You might look for a set of car keys that you put on, the wall every night when you leave to go to work. They're not there anymore. You look all over the house. Your wallet might be missing. You're looking all over, and you'll find it in a place you've already looked. You might find it that night. You might find it a couple of days later. You might never find it. It might be gone. And a lot of times this brings dissension amongst family members, because who are they going to blame? Where's my keys? You made me late for work. I had to ask for a ride. I had to call a cab. It cost me money. I didn't touch your keys. What are you talking about? So if there's dysfunction and discord in the family, they're going to try to create as much of that as possible to break people apart. And they're usually singling out one person, the focal person. They're usually singling out that one person for possession. So they'll have that person witness some phenomenon that the rest of the family is not witnessing. And if they do mention it to the rest of the family, and they're ridiculed, they're going to withdraw to themselves, and it gives the demonic an easier way to break down that person's will for possession, which is the ultimate goal of the demonic. They want to possess a person, and they want that person to kill themselves or to kill somebody else. They want death. That's their ultimate goal, is to create as much death as they can to a soul that is in a state of mortal sin. Because when that happens, God doesn't get the soul. The devil gets the soul. And that's where the sacrament of confession comes in, how important it is.
And you'd mentioned circumstances where, a wallet might disappear, keys might disappear and show up later. In the book, you share a story about a medal that you would wear around your neck that all of a sudden disappears and reappears at a later time. Tell us that story. I think that's a fascinating and powerful part of your book.
Well, that's happened a couple of times in cases where we would put the medal, we would bring St. Benedict medals and put them on the family members. And there was one particular case where that medal kept ending up on the floor. It was a little boy that was wearing it. And my own experience with one of my St. Benedict medals disappearing on me. I wear a St. Benedict medal all the time, but it's connected to my scapula. And I don't know if you can see it there, but that is the St. Benedict medal, along with the crucifix. And I don't know if you can see that. And it's on my scapula, which never comes off my neck. And back in those days, I was wearing just the St. Benedict medal, and I discovered it missing one day after coming in off patrol. Now, I had it underneath my T-shirt, and I had a vest over that, and my uniform shirt. And it was summertime, so it was pretty hot and sticky. But when I took my uniform off, I realized that my St. Benedict medal wasn't on the chain anymore. I even checked inside the cuffs of my uniform pants, when they sewed them up. I went out to the police car. I checked there. I didn't get into any fights that day. It was a quiet day. It was a day tour. And I couldn't find that medal. And it really upset me, to tell you the truth. It was very special to me. And I remember that night praying that I'd like my St. Benedict medal. It was given to me by a friend of mine, Joe Forrester. So it was sentimental to me. And I had hundreds of St. Benedict medals at my house that were blessed and ready to be utilized. I have one in my car, on the rearview mirror, and I put a new one on. But I wanted that particular medal. And it was that morning I got up and I was getting ready to go to work, and I was shaving, and I heard what it sounded like a gunshot, but in the distance. And my first thought was, what time is it? I got to make sure, just in case. You never know. That's how a cop minds work. I wanted to know the time that I heard that. And all of a sudden, I get hit in the back, and something actually slid down my back. So I checked, my medal, and it was in my, it was still around the chain. And I looked on the floor, and there was a St. Benedict medal on the floor. So that rattled me. That was pretty much my first instance where I had something happen to me, on that type of level. Usually I might see a shadow, or, I might hear a noise, or something might fall off the wall and stuff. That doesn't bother me, that stuff. But this was a blessed St. Benedict medal, and only very powerful demons that we refer to as devils can manipulate blessed objects. So now I'm realizing that medal that I had lost the day before was now given back to me in a not so nice manner. It was thrown at me. That sort of knocked me off the kilter for a couple of days. I did a lot of praying around that time. My ex-wife had told me to stay home, don't go to work today. Just it was one of the few times that she showed me a little loving. Stay home, don't go to work. you know. So that was a pretty profound experience, and I realized that I was no longer in Kansas anymore. I was in the deep end.
And Ralph, you shared a little bit ago about issues at a location. What are some of the telltale signs of a person who's under some level of demonic influence or maybe even possession? What are some of the things that we would notice that would be different about that person?
Well, the signs that are listed in the Roman ritual are they would show an aversion to God or anything holy, where they might not have in the past. They might have knowledge of information that they should not have knowledge about. Usually, it's a sin that you've committed that you never told anyone. You know, um, abnormal strength, something that they shouldn't have, and I've experienced this over and over again. With people that exhibited signs of strength that there's no way they should have had it. Put it this way: 8 grown men, fighting with a 90-pound, 5'4" female for 2 hours, is not something in the norm. And what's the other one? Oh, the aversion. I think I covered them all. But one of the things is a change in personality where they're no longer the same person that they used to be, where they might have been very easygoing, happy-go-lucky. Now they're exhibiting very argumentative, very nasty, very evil. Where they weren't vengeful type of people. Now they're becoming something, of a vengeful person, um, where little chinks in a person's personality now become something more serious. They're not getting along with anyone else. Um, they become more sinful in their behavior. Things that were maybe little weaknesses in their nature now become sinful. Um, they live in a perpetual state of mortal sin. Any mention of God throws them into a violent rage. Any like religious photo or a crucifix or the mention of the Blessed Mother's name is another one that'll throw a person possessed into rageful behavior, things of that nature. It's recognizable in the people around them, but that doesn't mean that they're not suffering from mental illness. That has to be ruled out. A good psychological makeup, along with a good medical makeup, needs to be taken care of before you're going to look into the area of maybe a spiritual problem. Because demonic possession will mimic mental illness. Your psychopaths and sociopaths, there could be some kind of mental defect or mental chemical imbalance in a person. Drug use is also another thing that changes a person's personality, and that doesn't mean they're possessed. And this has to be found out, and sometimes it takes a little investigation to find out what the root cause of the problem might be. So it's very important not to jump to conclusions at that particular point.
Next, I'd love to have you speak to religious provocation. Having read a wide range of books, like for some folks ministering in this space, that seems to be where they go first. Others, that's not necessarily the first place they're going to go. I just would love your thoughts, your opinion on that. I would imagine you've seen that used in varying capacities.
Well, for myself, I can speak for myself. I've never done religious provocation on a daily basis or in every case. In fact, I didn't like doing it. And with the exception of the demon files, I believe in all of the years that I've been investigating, I've only did it 3 times. And that was usually at the insistence of Ed Warren. when I was his investigator, if he said, Ralph, do religious provocation, I did it. I was his investigator. I did what he told me to do. But in my own cases, I was never really interested in seeing anything. My main concern was to go there, do an interview, you know, formulate my opinion on my interview, which would decide if I was going to actually do an exorcism in the house or not. But for the demon files, I couldn't do that. It would have been a very boring show. So I not only integrated the use of the scientific methods that I used with the spirit box, the REM pod, and the grid pens, and all of that satellite tracking stuff that my investigators like to play with. I did religious provocation because I wanted to prove the reality of the demonic for the people that would be susceptible in, agreeing. There are some people that no matter what you show them, they wouldn't believe. They don't want to believe because now they have to take responsibility for their lives. Now, if you've told me that, well, yeah, you've proved to me that the devil exists, well, then you have to believe in God. And now you have an accounting for your life. There's a lot of people out there, they don't want that. They want to go through life doing their own thing. They don't want to believe there's anything above them. They don't want to believe that there's a higher power that they are accountable to. So they'll shut all of that out. But I did it specifically so I can get people to understand that there is a devil and there is a God, most importantly, and you need to act accordingly in your life, because when it ends, there's only one or two places that you're going. You're either going to heaven or you're going to hell. And if you don't believe in God, I don't see how you're going to end up in heaven. Because there are many scriptural passages where Jesus said, I don't know you. And if he's saying to you, I don't know you, he's not going to invite you into his kingdom. It's like a stranger showing up at your front door, knocking on the door and say, listen, I want to live here. If you don't know them, you're going to say, what are you, crazy? Get the heck out of here. I don't know you. You're not coming in. So why should God be any different? Why should he invite you into his kingdom, into his home, when you never made an effort while you were alive to worship him, which is why we're here in the first place. God created us to worship his son. If you're not worshiping him, there's only one place for you to go at the end, and it's not good. So these are some of the things that I try to, bring to the forefront in not only my book and not only the movie, which, Scott Derrickson did a great job in bringing out these certain messages within that movie that basically, are the foundation of the Catholic faith. So, I wanted, sometimes people need to be scared straight, but the demonic are not going to perform for the cameras. They lose souls when they do that. They don't want to, so the religious provocation was designed to anger the demon to the point where he would lash out. And as you notice, he didn't. But if you look at some of these other shows, and I'm not knocking anybody, but when they go in there and they're not spiritually protected to provoke these things, they get scratched, they get attacked, and that was the point of the whole thing, is that I'm going to come in here and I'm going to provoke these demonic spirits that don't like us. They hate us, and they don't like when you ridicule them and you go after them because of our nature. We have a fallen nature as human beings, and they know this. And they're basically like, you're a human being. You don't have as much power as we have. We're from one of the 9 angelic choirs that God created. We're more powerful than you, which is one of the reasons why Lucifer rebelled against God, is because he did not want to minister to a lower creature than him. And in his pride, he said, I will not serve you. I will not worship your son. I will not worship the woman that your son is born of. And I'm my own God. So you could see how the devil would not like one of these lower creatures that were created below him challenging him. But I never challenge in my own name. I always challenge in the name of Jesus Christ, because it's only the divine power that keeps them in check. So using his name in that manner is a command, and they don't like it coming from a lower creature. But if you remember that Jesus said in scripture is that we should not rejoice in the fact that demons and the devil are subject to us in his name, in Jesus's name, but to rejoice that our names are written in the book of life. You know, that's we're not supposed to swell up with pride on casting demons out and devils out, but we are supposed to give glory and honor to God only, never ourselves. And Jesus again said in the last day, people are going to say, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not heal the sick in your name? Did we not cast out devils in your name? And Jesus says to them, away from me, you doers of iniquity. You didn't know me. You used my name, but you didn't really know who I am. And that's a fear. You know, casting out devils is not a good indication of eternal salvation. We can lose it by our actions, by living in sin, by being sinful creatures. That's why he gave the 12 apostles on Easter night the power to forgive sins. Whose sins you forgive, they will be forgiven in heaven. And whose sins you retain, they'll be retained in heaven. So it's going through life is not as easy as we might like it to be. You know, we have to give an account for what we've done and what we haven't done.
Well, Ralph, next I'd love for you to speak to the idea of perfect possession. And if I remember correctly, one of your mentors told you if you encounter somebody who is in a state of perfect possession, run. I'm assuming that's when, like, in terms of the person being impacted, like that breakdown is complete. So speak to that a little bit. And then in terms of helping that person get free, I'm assuming that could be a longer road.
Well, when we look at perfect possession, what Father Martin was referring to is somebody who asks to be possessed, wants to be possessed, because even though a person is possessed, there's still the free will within that person. The devil has no authority over a person's free will unless they give it to him. That's where the perfect possession comes in. If you saw the Demon Files, one of the women, Leanne, actually gave her soul to the devil through a ritual, and we had to reverse that. And it all comes down to the free will, the intention. Now, a person who's possessed that reaches out for help still has the exercising of that free will to ask for help and have the intention to get rid of what's terrorizing them. And that is needed. If we don't have that element, then there's nothing we can do for that person. And basically what Father Martin is saying is it's not even worth it. You can't do anything for that person. And if you try, you've now put yourself on some really, really dangerous ground. And that's why it's very important when we do investigations is to, fully get involved to see if this person has the intention. Once we've identified that we're dealing with a demonic possession, not a mental illness, we have to identify that element within their free will that says, I want to be free from this. And then we proceed. If not, it's never going to be a successful exorcism and everybody involved could find themselves in a very bad situation. That's what Father Martin was basically saying. Because I'm not in the habit of running. He knew that. He knew I was not going to turn around and run. It's not in my makeup. I've trained my whole entire life not to run from violence, not to run from adversity, not to run from fear, but to remain and address it. So, I knew what he meant by that. It was just an expression that he used, that don't get involved in it. Leave it alone, and that's what that meant.
One of the things that's been new to me talking to Catholic exorcists and just interviews and reading books is the Blessed Mother's role in exorcism and in deliverance in a more evangelical or charismatic space. That does not come up at all. So I'd love to get your input on the Blessed Mother's role in the work you do and in the work of exorcism.
Well, you got to understand what traditional Catholics believe is that the Blessed Mother is something different than the rest of humanity. She was born with every virtue, and we struggle for these virtues. Humility is the Blessed Mother's strongest virtue. What is the devil's downfall? Pride, right?
Pride. Yep, pride.
What is the opposite of pride? Humility. She has an abundance of humility. Not only that, when Lucifer rebelled against God, God revealed some of his plan to the angelic choirs. They were the first beings that he created, were the angels. Lucifer was a seraphim angel. That's the closest choir to God. It's the seraphim, the cherubim, and the thrones. So in that first hierarchy, there are 6 other choirs of angels after that. The dominations, the powers, and the principalities. No, the virtues. I'm sorry. It's the dominations, the powers, and the virtues. Then it's the principalities, the archangels, and the angels. Those are the 9 choirs of angels. Lucifer was in the seraphim choir. He was the most beautiful creation that God created to that point. But they were still undergoing their probation period at this time, because God doesn't want robots. He wants you to choose him of your own free will. There's 2 faculties to the soul: free will and intelligence. The angelic choirs are extremely intelligent. They also experience the free will aspect of God's creation. That's his love for us, for a short period of time. He wanted them to choose him just like he wants us to choose him. The difference is that when we fall, we can be forgiven. The angelic choirs, once they fell once because of their nature, their intelligent nature. They knew the consequences to all of their actions in a moment. Humans don't have that ability. So when God revealed some of his plan to Lucifer, Lucifer started to not like the fact that he was going to praise God unceasingly. When God revealed further his plan to send his son to be born of a woman, he never said his son's name, and he never mentioned the name of the Blessed Mother. He referred to them as the incarnate Word born of a woman in human form, which is a lower creature. That's when Lucifer said, "No, I won't serve. I will destroy the incarnate Word, and I will destroy that woman." And that's when God said to him, "I will put enmity between her seed and your seed, and she will crush your head, and you will lie in wait for her heel." God was telling Lucifer, the devil, at that point, that it's that woman who's going to defeat you. How does she defeat him? By bringing Jesus Christ and saying, "Yes, to the plan of God. Yes, do unto me as you will. I will accept. You will call him Jesus. Now, St. Gabriel was telling her this. In her free will, she could have said, no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. She didn't say that. She said, yes, I will do it. And she brought Jesus Christ into this world. Now, when Jesus Christ came into this world, he had one goal. That was to suffer his passions and die on that cross. So us in our fallen nature, through the original sin that Adam and Eve brought into this world, he overcame that. He defeated sin and defeated death. And in that moment, he defeated the devil. Because now the devil was completely and utterly impotent. And it was through the Blessed Mother that he was defeated. And he knows it. And he also knows that at the end, when it's all done, and that final act comes, she is the one who's going to crush his head. And he doesn't like that because he's a misogynist and he hates human beings because we have a fallen nature and we could be forgiven for sin. And the only way that we were forgiven for that sin is because Jesus Christ died on that cross for us. And it's not free. We have to earn it. You ever hear the saying, nothing good is for free?
Yes, I've heard that before.
Well, it applies to the way we live our lives here on this earth. Salvation is not for free. We got to earn it, even though Jesus gave us the ability to earn it. St. Pio is a very, very powerful saint in the Catholic Church. He said that if he's a stigmatist, he had the stigmata for 50 years, suffered the wounds of Christ. And he said that if we knew how much power we have over the devil in just praying the rosary every day, it would be laughable. We would be able to laugh at the devil because of that power that we've been given by having a relationship with the Mother of God and honoring her. What's wrong with, we don't worship the Blessed Mother. We worship God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. But we honor the saints and the Blessed Mother. It's the fourth commandment, honor thy father and mother. If you've gone through life and your parents are worthy of honor and you haven't done it, well, you had to have a serious problem at the end when you go to your particular judgment. You know, that now there are some people out there that don't deserve the title of mother and father. They're horrible. That's not what Jesus is saying. Don't honor somebody who's horrible like that. You know, they're unworthy of it. But if your mother and father have done everything for you, have given you the best life that they could, you better damn well honor your mother and father. So what is the problem with honoring the Mother of God, the Mother of Jesus? When he was a little boy and he fell down and he skinned his knee or cut his elbow, it was the Blessed Mother that was comforting him. So why can't we honor the Mother of God? That her womb is holy ground. The Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of the New Covenant is Jesus Christ. The womb of the Blessed Mother is the new Ark of the New Covenant. So how could you not worship, not honor? I got to be careful with that word because there's so many Protestants that I hear from. We don't worship them. No, we don't worship the Blessed Mother. Listen to my words. We honor the Blessed Mother. She's the Mother of God. We honor Saint Joseph, the foster father of Jesus. You know, when Herod was looking to kill all the firstborn males, it was the angel Gabriel that told Saint Joseph in a dream, take the woman and the child and go flee to Egypt. Get out of there. Save Jesus's life by doing that, by listening to the angel Saint Gabriel. So you got to understand there is a proper place for the Blessed Mother in all of this. She's the queen of the angels and saints. She sits at the right hand of Jesus, her son. She plays three roles. No, I'm sorry. She plays 4 roles in the Catholic Church. She's the daughter of God. She's the mother of Jesus. She's the spouse of the Holy Ghost. And she's the queen of the angels and saints. She rules in heaven. She's our advocate and intercessor here on earth. And what is, what I don't understand is people are always constantly asking me to pray for them. And I do. But I'm a sinner. You're asking a sinner, a person who has a fallen nature, to pray for you. What is wrong with me going to the Mother of God and saying, please, Blessed Mother, pray for me? She gazes upon the beatific face of God. What is wrong with me going to a saint saying, Saint Pio, pray for me. I need some intercession here. I need some guidance. I need some help. You go to your local pastor at the church, you say, pray for me, Father. Pray for me, minister. Pray for me, pastor. They're all men. They're all fallen natured, right? Everybody has a fallen nature. I don't see too many saints running around here on earth, myself included. But you're asking me for prayers. When my eternal salvation, I don't know is that secure or not. Of course, I'm going to pray for you, yes. But when you go to the folks that lived on this earth that gaze upon the beatific face of God, I mean, they're right before him. That's who you want praying for you. Because God is hearing them. I don't know if God hears my prayers. He might say, you know what? I'm disgusted with Ralph. I don't even want to hear from him. And I'm praying and for you. And I don't know if God's hearing those prayers, but I know that when I say to the Blessed Mother, I need your intercession. I need your help.
Well, and I think for our Protestant listeners, that's definitely a helpful distinction that you're drawing a difference between worshiping and honoring. So I really sincerely appreciate you taking us down a deep dive on that topic. I'm sure I'll get questions about that. So thank you for talking at length about that. You in terms of your work as a demonologist, you've been at this for quite some time now. If you had to contrast when you first started out to now in this field, in this space, what have been some of the biggest changes? I feel like in terms of when you were starting out to now, a lot of this stuff, as you suggested earlier too, it's more out there. You see a lot more coverage of these topics in terms of media and pop culture and whatnot. But if looking back, what is it that's most different between when you were starting out and now?
My faith. My faith has definitely got stronger. I've sought out God in the right manner. Scripture is great. And there's an interpretation of scripture, but I believe that there is something more underlying those scriptural passages. And it's up to us to seek that out, because that is what Jesus wants us to do in seeking out his Father, to know his Father better, to know Jesus better, to know the Blessed Mother better, is that there is more to it than just the surface interpretation of that scriptural passage. And I found over the years that there is indeed more to it than just what's on that surface. And that's what God is wanting us to do, is to seek the deeper meaning of who he is. So when you go to your particular judgment, Jesus says, I know you. You're going to want to hear those words. You're not going to want to hear, I didn't know you, because you never sought him out. And Jesus did definitely say, you can only come to my Father through me. That's how you get to my Father. You get through me. And I believe that the quickest and most safest way to get to know Jesus is through his mother. What mother that loves her child is not going to bring his best friend to him? Like when you're a little kid, you knock on your friend's door. Hey, is Johnny home? Usually it's the mother that answers the door. She knows that her son is best friends with you. She's going to say, no, he's down the block when he's in his room. No, she's going to say, come in, he's in his room. That's the same way I look upon a Blessed Mother. She's going to bring you to her son and say, here he is. Of course, you can get to know Jesus without honoring the Blessed Mother. But what person knows their son better than a mother? I mean, a real mother. So I look at the Blessed Mother in that manner, and it's my relationship with her, basically, that helps me to follow Jesus. Because you got to remember, how do we really follow Jesus? Through his passion, his suffering, through his humiliation. The best way to follow Jesus is to follow him through our carrying our crosses like he has. He carried that cross. He suffered those passions. He suffered that humiliation. And the Blessed Mother was there every step of the way. She saw him scourged. She saw him crowned with thorns. She saw him carrying his cross. She saw him nailed to it. She saw him die. That's the way we need to follow Jesus. We need to see his passions. We need to follow him when he carried his cross. We need to nail ourselves to that cross with him. We need to die in him in order to overcome sin and death.
Well, Ralph, one thing I know this sort of an interview is going to attract is people who are curious. They wonder if this is a space they're called to operate in. So, in terms of somebody feeling a calling towards whether it's to be a demonologist or participate in this sort of ministry, what would be your caution? What would be your feedback? I feel like that's another circumstance where intentions would be really important for why we'd even want to get involved with something like this.
Well, the first thing, like I said, you need to have a relationship with God. If you're not, don't even bother approaching this field because you're only going to wind up getting hurt. And there's no guarantee really that even if you do know God, that you're not going to get hurt, because God allows things to happen to us, in this world. And I couldn't give you a reason why. I wouldn't be so bold as to, tell you why God does things. There's a joke that I heard: how do you make God laugh? Tell him your plans. So the first thing you need to do is, if you do not have a strong relationship with God, then I don't know how you can heed the call, because I believe that this is a calling, not to sound egotistical, because it's not. I know my proper place in this life. I know what I am and I know what I'm not. But I believe that it's God who chooses who he'll utilize um, to help his children. And that's what this work is all about. If you don't have pure motives, then you're not going to do it right. You won't last very long. Your motives have to be that you are here to help the children of God that have this problem. So your motivation has to be pure. You cannot get in this for self gain. There might come a time when you're involved in communicating with spirit. And we're told in scripture not to communicate with the dead. Do not communicate with spirit. I believe the interpretation of that is for self gain, because there are people that will manipulate the spirit world for self gain, money, power, sex, all of the materialistic gains that this world has to offer, which we're told to shun. Live in the world, but do not become a part of the world. We have to live in the world, but be outside of the world, which means we got to live in the spirit and not in the flesh. Because if we live in the flesh, we're never going to attain heaven. So we need to live our lives where our flesh follows the spirit, not the other way around. So you need to have that pure motive where you're here to help other people. And that's always the way I put my mindset, a word we don't hear too much anymore, of mindset. My intention is not to gain anything materialistic, but to gain spiritually. But even like I said, that biblical passage that I quoted earlier, I don't know what the the chapter or the verse. I'm not a biblical scholar. I can't remember those things, but it's not a good indication of eternal salvation. We're told to have good works. I know a lot of Protestants don't believe in that. St. Paul said, you need faith and good works. Because Jesus is going to ask us two questions, right? Did you love me? Did you know me? And what have you done? Have you loved your neighbor? Two most important commandments. Love God and love your neighbor. And loving that neighbor translates into charity, Christian charity. How much charity towards your fellow human beings did you exhibit in your life? He's going to want to know that. You're going to have to account for that. The three theological virtues are faith, hope, and charity. We need faith while we're here. We need hope while we're here. We need charity. And if we do obtain heaven, we no longer need faith. We no longer need hope, but we still need charity. It's one of the Christian virtues. It's one of the virtues that we will carry with us into heaven. And if we don't exhibit it here on earth, we're not making it into heaven. So I always did my work. My ministry has always been based in Christian charity. It's one of the things that we need. And if you are getting involved in this work, you have to do it in the spirit of Christian charity. If not, it's all a waste and you're going to wind up getting hurt. Not only that, you might hurt your family members too, because something might take vengeance on you and take vengeance on you through your family, because they're not below that. The devil will hurt your family to get at you. It's not beneath him.
And in terms of other books, resources, like Malachi Martin's book, Hostage to the Devil, a fantastic read. It's kind of, I would describe it as kind of a hard read in that he's very revealing in the cases he shares. Like, it's a very intense book. So that's one I would definitely recommend. Obviously, Ed and Lorraine Warren's case files, there's a whole wide range of books that are out there from them. But any other books besides yours that you would recommend, Ralph, for people wanting to at least dive a little deeper, learn a little bit more? Anything you found helpful?
Well, I would look at Father Armott's books.
His books are
An
great.
Exorcist tells a story, and then an Exorcist tells more stories, and he has a series of books out there. I would not suggest picking up Hostage to the Devil and reading that right off the bat. That should be like last in your repertoire. Get a good relationship with God before you delve into that book, because that's a book in and of itself, in its own category, as far as I'm concerned. Reading The Demonologist and The Ghost Hunters, which is also Ed and Lorraine's book. Father Ahmad's book is a little softer. Those are the types of books that you'd want to read before you get into Father Ahmad's book, because that's going to make your head spin. No pun intended. It's really involved.
Yeah,
that scared a lot of people. A lot of people got scared reading that book.
And I think even people who are well versed or have read quite a few books in this space will find what Father Martin shares in his book at the very least jarring or disturbing, because, like I said, it is very intense. The Demonologist is a fantastic overview of Ed and Lorraine's kind of careers and ministry and everything. So that's one I would definitely recommend as well.
Sure.
Ralph, in terms of content from you, I understand you're building a new YouTube channel. Where do we discover that and connect with more of your content?
Well, I've started a YouTube channel. You can it's called Deliver Us from Evil, the series. There's a lot of Deliver Us from Evil stuff out there, in connection with the movie. But my channel is Ralph Sarchie, and it's Deliver Us from Evil, the series. I just started the channel maybe about 3 weeks ago. So what I'm doing now is I'm going through the book Deliver Us from Evil. I'm going chapter by chapter, and I'm just giving a little more insight. I'm actually putting up some of the audio of the actual interviews that I was never really able to do. And then once I'm done with the book, I'm going to go into the movie, behind the scenes with that, and then the Demon Files. I have a lot of footage that didn't make the show. That's pretty interesting. But we did a week's worth of investigation. We put into 43 minutes of a TV show. There is so much that we couldn't actually profile, and I want to use it eventually as a learning tool. I teach classes. I'm going to start my classes up. I'm getting a lot of people coming to me and asking me, when I'm going to start offering the classes, and I'm probably going to offer them through like a Zoom type of thing. But I'm illiterate when it comes to computers and these little apps and gadgets, so I have to work on things first. So, I'm getting the YouTube channel up and running. I have a Facebook page. That would be the quickest and easiest way to make direct contact with me is through Facebook. And that's it. I don't have websites or anything like that. That's not my type of style. Look at how many years it's taken me to get a YouTube channel. So I'm behind the curve, but I'm getting there.
Well, better late than never.
Better late than never, right?
And like we do with every episode, we'll have links in the show notes. I'll be sure to include a link to Ralph's Facebook page, his YouTube channel, so you can click on through, like, subscribe, follow, all the things you have to do to make sure you're connected there. We'll also include links to where you can pick up your very own copy of his book as well. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Ralph Sarchie. Once again, our book today was Deliver Us from Evil, a New York City cop investigates the supernatural. And Ralph, I just want to say thank you for sharing with us today. I've wanted to talk to you for like 5-6 years, so I was so delighted that we were finally able to make this happen. Just thanks for going deep and delivering a fantastic interview. I really appreciate it.
You're a great interview. I enjoyed this. Very nice.